President Elena Rodriguez walked through the halls of the new Galactic Assembly building on Nexus Prime, a world that had once symbolized council supremacy, but now hosted a democracy of equals. 2 years had passed since the failed siege of New Haven, and the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The building itself showed how much had changed. Where once crystal beings like Thisahal had looked down on lesser species from elevated platforms, now representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in a great circle where no one position was higher than any other. The old council chamber had been redesigned by Alliance architects who believed that physical equality helped create political equality. Elena stopped before the memorial wall that honored those who had died during the war that followed the siege. The fighting had lasted 18 months and touched every corner of civilized space. But it had not been the one-sided slaughter the old council had expected when they declared the Alliance an illegal rebellion. Jake Morrison, now an admiral in the Integrated Galactic Defense Force, joined Elena as she read the names of the fallen. His own ship, the Unity, was a perfect example of how the galaxy had changed. The vessel had been designed by engineers from 12 different species working together, each contributing their unique strengths to create something no single race could have built alone. The ship's adaptive systems had been created by humans, but Taraki hive minds coordinated them with insect precision. Granith materials made the hull nearly indestructible, while Solani navigation systems could plot courses through dimensions other species could not perceive. Kalari telepaths who had joined the Alliance provided communication that was faster than any technological system. Dr. Lisa Chang approached them carrying a datapad, filled with reports from the new Academy of Adaptive Sciences. The institution had become the most important educational center in the galaxy, not because it taught the most advanced techniques, but because it taught beings how to learn from each other. Lisa's research had proven that every species possessed unique capabilities that could benefit all others. The Zephyrians' matter manipulation became more precise when guided by human adaptability. Fourth-hand phasing technology became more reliable when stabilized by Granith endurance. Even the energy beings who had once seemed godlike discovered they could accomplish more when working with biological allies. The Academy's most important discovery was that the architects had designed their technology to encourage exactly this kind of cooperation. The ancient race had built systems that became more powerful when used by multiple species working together. The old council's insistence on hierarchy and separation had prevented anyone from accessing the full potential of architect inheritance. Captain Dan Foster, now Director of Archaeological Research, had spent 2 years exploring architect ruins throughout the galaxy. His teams included members from dozens of species, each bringing their own perspectives to the study of ancient mysteries. The collaborative approach had revealed more about architect civilization in months than the Council had learned in millennia. The architects had faced the same choice that now confronted the galaxy. They could have used their advanced technology to dominate other species, but instead they had chosen to teach and guide. Their ruins contained libraries of knowledge freely shared and tools designed to help primitive races reach their full potential. The architects had disappeared not because they were destroyed, but because they had evolved beyond the need for physical existence. They had achieved perfect cooperation between all members of their society and had transcended into something greater than any individual species could become alone. Elena entered the main assembly chamber, where representatives from 800 worlds were debating the new galactic charter. The document would replace the old council's laws with principles based on cooperation, mutual aid, and the belief that every species had something valuable to contribute to galactic civilization. Kate Williams addressed the assembly about the technical standards that would govern shared technology. Her adaptive processors had become the foundation for all Alliance equipment, but she insisted that every species should contribute their own innovations to the common pool. The goal was not human dominance, but genuine partnership. General Ryan Davis reported on security arrangements for the new galactic government. The old council had maintained order through fear and superior firepower. The Alliance kept peace through cooperation and mutual defense treaties. Every member species contributed to collective security based on their abilities and resources. The most dramatic moment came when Thisahal itself requested permission to address the assembly. The crystal being that had once dismissed humanity as primitive now stood before representatives of the species it had looked down upon. Its words were simple, but they carried the weight of galactic transformation. This hell admitted that the old council had been wrong about the nature of advancement and superiority. True progress came not from hoarding power, but from sharing knowledge. The crystal being apologized for millennia of oppression and asked to be allowed to contribute to the new galactic community as an equal member rather than a ruler. The response from the assembly was unanimous approval. Even species that had suffered under council rule voted to welcome their former oppressors as partners in building a better future. The alliance had proven that cooperation was stronger than revenge. Commander Beth Parker, now Secretary of Colonial Development, announced the success of the Great Expansion Project. Hundreds of worlds that had been considered unsuitable for settlement were being transformed through adaptive technology and interspecies cooperation. The galaxy's population was no longer limited by the boundaries imposed by single-species thinking. Dr. Maya Johnson reported on the success of the Cultural Exchange Program. Young beings from different species were learning together at integrated schools throughout the galaxy. Children who grew up with friends from other races would create a generation that saw diversity as strength rather than division. The program had produced amazing results. Human children who played with Taraki friends developed coordination skills their parents could never achieve. Young Kalari who socialized with other species learned to use their telepathy for communication rather than domination. Granith youngsters who studied with faster-thinking races gained flexibility their ancient culture had never known. Teacher Linda Brown had become the first director of interspecies education. Her schools used teaching methods that adapted to the learning styles of different races. Students learned not just facts, but how to think in ways that their own species might never discover alone. Mechanic Joe Turner, now Chief of Adaptive Engineering, demonstrated how mechanical problems that had puzzled single species for centuries could be solved in hours by mixed teams. A Granith's patience combined with human creativity and Taraki coordination could repair devices that their designers had considered impossible to fix. Engineer Maria Lopez had established the Quantum Research Collective, where Vorthan phase specialists worked with human adaptive experts to explore dimensions that neither species could access alone. Their discoveries were opening new frontiers that would have remained hidden if each species had worked in isolation. The most powerful symbol of galactic transformation was the Architect Memorial Station built around the ruins of the ancient race's most important site. The station served as both museum and active research facility where beings from across the galaxy worked together to understand their shared inheritance. Elena Rodriguez concluded the assembly session by reading from the preamble to the new Galactic Charter. The words would govern interspecies relations for generations to come, and they reflected everything the Alliance had learned about cooperation and growth. The document declared that all intelligent species possessed inherent dignity and the right to determine their own destiny. It established that technological advancement meant nothing without moral progress, and that true strength came from lifting others up rather than holding them down. Most importantly, it recognized that the galaxy belonged to everyone who was willing to work together to make it better. As representatives from hundreds of worlds voted to ratify the charter, Elena thought about how far the galaxy had come since 3 humans first met the Council on this same world. They had been dismissed as primitives with nothing to offer galactic civilization. Now their principles governed the most advanced society in known space. The old Council had mocked humanity for being unbreakable in the face of superior power. They had been right about human stubbornness, but wrong about what it meant. Being unbreakable did not mean never falling down. It meant always getting back up and learning from the experience. Humanity had taught the galaxy that true strength came not from what a species was born with, but from what they chose to become. Every defeat was a lesson. Every challenge was an opportunity. And every limitation was temporary if beings refused to accept it as permanent. The stars still burned in the same patterns they had always followed. But now they illuminated a universe where cooperation had replaced domination, where diversity was celebrated instead of feared, and where every species could reach for greatness without stepping on others. The Hegemon fleet appeared on New Haven's sensors like a storm front of metal and energy. 3,000 ships from the most powerful species in the galaxy, moved toward the outer rim with the single purpose of crushing humanity and its alliance before their dangerous ideas could spread any further. General Ryan Davis stood in the eye colony's war room and watched the tactical display show impossible odds. The Council had sent enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. Leading this armada was Vex Thor of the Machina Collective, a being that was more machine than flesh, and had never lost a battle in 10,000 years of warfare. Governor Beth Parker received the final surrender demand from the Council just hours before the fleet reached New Haven. The message was simple and brutal. Humanity and all Alliance species would submit to immediate reclassification as Class 8 servants. Their worlds would be occupied and their populations relocated to serve more advanced civilizations. Resistance would result in complete extinction. Beth's response was equally simple. She transmitted a single word back to the approaching fleet. No. The siege of Haven began at dawn on the 73rd day of the galactic year 4521. Vexithor's massive flagship, the Dominator, led the attack with weapons that could crack planets. The first bombardment was designed to break human morale and force immediate surrender. Instead, the colonists did something that amazed even their allies. They adapted to the attack faster than anyone thought possible. Kate Williams's processors had learned to predict enemy firing patterns from the first salvo and began coordinating defensive responses that made the most of limited resources. Captain Tony Richards led the human fighter squadrons against impossible odds. His pilots flew ships that were tiny compared to Council vessels, but those ships learned from every engagement. By the second day of battle, human fighters were using tactics that confused enemies who had been fighting for millennia. The Taraki hive mind coordination proved its worth when Alliance ground forces had to repel landing attempts. Click Singer directed thousands of defenders with a precision that let small groups defeat much larger forces. Human adaptive technology, guided by insect coordination, created defensive patterns that shifted faster than attackers could counter them. Commander Sarah Walsh coordinated the planet's civilian population in ways that turned every colonist into part of the war effort. Children too young to fight served as message runners using routes that adult aliens could not follow. Elderly colonists who could not handle weapons became spotters, and analysts whose knowledge of the planet helped defenders anticipate enemy movements. Dr. Kevin Clark proved that even farmers could contribute to the war effort. His experimental crops had been designed to grow in New Haven's harsh soil, but they also contained nutrients that helped human fighters recover from injuries faster than Council medical officers thought possible. His greenhouses became emergency medical stations that kept the colony fighting when normal hospitals would have been overwhelmed. Teacher Linda Brown organized the colony's children into code-breaking teams that solved communication puzzles adult minds could not handle. The young humans found patterns in enemy signals that revealed attack plans and fleet movements. Their innocent perspective saw solutions that trained intelligence officers missed completely. Mechanic Joe Turner created repair techniques that turned battlefield salvage into working equipment. His workshops could rebuild human fighters using parts from destroyed enemy ships. Alliance vessels that should have been written off as total losses returned to combat stronger than before they were damaged. The siege that Vexithor expected to last 3 days stretched into 3 weeks, then 3 months. Every assault that failed taught the Alliance defenders something new about Council tactics. Every victory made the supposedly primitive species more confident and more dangerous. Pilot Jake Stevens led a squadron that specialized in psychological warfare against Kalari telepaths. His team had learned to turn their own pain and fear into weapons that disrupted enemy mental attacks. The humans could not block telepathic assault, but they could reflect it back at its source with interest. Engineer Maria Lopez developed containment systems that could trap Vorthan phase warriors who tried to infiltrate Alliance positions. Her adaptive fields learned to match quantum signatures in real time, making it impossible for the supposedly untouchable aliens to escape once they materialized inside human defenses. The breakthrough moment came during the 4th month of the siege when something unprecedented happened. A group of young Kalari fighters refused orders to attack a human medical station. The alien pilots had been watching human behavior for months and had developed respect for beings who showed such incredible courage under impossible circumstances. The incident sparked debates within the Council fleet that spread like a virus through every ship. Junior officers from advanced species began questioning why they were destroying beings whose only crime was refusing to accept permanent inferiority. Some pointed out that the Alliance had offered to share their discoveries with everyone, not just primitive species. Vexthor tried to maintain discipline through increasingly harsh punishments, but the damage was already done. His own troops were beginning to admire the enemy they were supposed to exterminate. The idea that any species could earn respect through determination rather than natural gifts was more dangerous to Council authority than any weapon. The Granith proved their worth when Council forces tried to use seismic weapons to destabilize New Haven's geology. The Livingstone beings absorbed earthquake energy and redirected it back at enemy positions. What should have been the colony's death blow became a counterattack that damaged several Council ships. The Solani contributed by sharing their three-dimensional thinking with human tactical planners. Their aquatic minds could visualize battle movements in ways that land-dwelling species found impossible to follow. Alliance strategies became so complex and unpredictable that even advanced artificial intelligences could not counter them. Effectively, Dr. Maya Johnson made contact with sympathizer groups within the Council fleet during the 5th month of the siege. Young members of supposedly superior species were forming secret organizations dedicated to supporting Alliance principles. They provided intelligence about enemy plans and sometimes sabotaged their own equipment to help the defenders. The turning point came when Vexthor ordered a final assault designed to overwhelm Alliance defenses. Through sheer brutality, every ship in the Hegemon fleet would attack simultaneously, while ground forces landed at a dozen different points. The cyborg commander was certain that even adaptive humans could not respond to so many threats at once. He was wrong. The Alliance had spent 6 months learning to work together as a single organism. Human adaptability, Taraki coordination, Granith endurance, and Solani creativity combined into something greater than the sum of its parts. The final assault became a demonstration of what cooperation could accomplish against domination. The battle reached its climax when Vexthor's flagship entered New Haven's atmosphere to personally oversee the destruction of the colony's command center. The massive vessel should have been untouchable, but Kate Williams had prepared a surprise that used everything the Alliance had learned about architect technology. A wave of adaptive energy struck the Dominator and began converting its static systems into evolving ones. The ship's weapons became more accurate, but they also started targeting Council vessels instead of Alliance positions. The navigation systems became more efficient, but they began plotting courses away from the battle instead of toward it. Vexthor found himself trapped inside a ship that was learning to disobey his orders. The architect technology was doing what it was originally designed to do: adapt to serve the needs of growth rather than the demands of stagnation. The most feared weapon in the Council arsenal had become an argument for Alliance principles. The sight of the flagship turning against its own fleet broke what remained of Council morale. Thousands of junior officers who had been questioning their orders chose that moment to openly refuse further participation in what they now saw as an unjust war. The Hegemon fleet that had come to destroy the Alliance retreated in disorder, leaving behind damaged ships and shattered confidence. For the first time in galactic history, the supposedly superior species had been defeated not by greater power but by greater principles. Beth Parker stood on the observation deck of New Haven's main tower and watched the enemy fleet disappear into hyperspace. Around her, colonists celebrated a victory that should have been impossible. They had proven that beings who refused to accept limitations could overcome any obstacle. The galaxy would never be the same. The siege of New Haven had shown every species that the Council's claims of natural superiority were false. More importantly, it had demonstrated that cooperation based on mutual respect was stronger than hierarchy based on inherited privilege. The real war was just beginning, but the Alliance had won its most important battle. They had broken the myth that some beings were born to rule while others were born to serve. Dr. Maya Johnson received the first secret message on a Tuesday morning while reviewing colony supply reports. The transmission came from a star system 300 light-years away and was hidden inside what looked like normal space traffic data. When she decoded the signal, Maya discovered something that would change the course of galactic history. The message came from the Taraki, a species of insect-like beings that the Galactic Council had classified as Class 6 primitives. For thousands of years, they had accepted their low status and served more advanced species without complaint. But news of humanity's victory over the Kalari had given them hope that change was possible. Maya brought the message to Governor Beth Parker, who now led the New Haven colony, after being elected by the colonists. Beth read the decoded transmission twice before speaking. The Taraki were offering to share information about other species that were unhappy with council rule. They wanted to know if humans would be interested in working together. The decision to respond was not easy. Making contact with other primitive species would anger the council even more than they already were. But Beth knew that humanity could not stand alone against the combined power of 2,000 worlds. They needed allies, even if those allies were as weak as they were. Kate Williams had spent 2 years improving her adaptive technology since the Kalari attack. Her processors had learned so much from that battle that they could now anticipate enemy tactics before they were used. But Kate knew that raw technology was not enough to challenge the galactic order. Humans needed friends who could teach them things no machine could learn. The first meeting between humans and Taraki took place on an abandoned mining station in neutral space. Maya led a small team that included Jake Morrison and Dr. Alex Thompson. They did not know what to expect from humanity's first alien allies. The Taraki delegation was led by someone who called herself Click Singer because of the musical sounds she made when communicating. She was smaller than an average human, but her forearms and multifaceted eyes gave her an alien grace that was both beautiful and strange. Clicksinger explained that her people had been watching human progress with great interest. The Taraki possessed something called hive mind coordination that let them work together in ways no other species could match. But the Council had never valued this ability because it was not flashy or obviously powerful like telepathy or matter manipulation. Maya shared information about human adaptive technology and the principles behind it. She explained how humans learned from every challenge and used that knowledge to become stronger. Clicksinger was fascinated by the idea that technology could grow and change instead of staying the same forever. The two species quickly realized they could help each other in ways neither had imagined. Taraki hive mind coordination could make human adaptive systems work much faster and more efficiently. Human flexibility could help the Taraki break free from the rigid thinking patterns that had kept them in service to other species for so long. Jake Morrison returned to New Haven with news that would transform the colony. The Taraki were not the only species interested in challenging council authority. Messages were already coming in from the Granith, a race of living stone beings who provided manual labor across the galaxy. The aquatic Solani had also made contact, along with dozens of other primitive species. Beth Parker called for a meeting of all the colony's leaders to discuss this new development. The humans faced a choice that would determine their future, and possibly the future of the entire galaxy. They could try to improve their own status within the existing system, or they could work to tear that system down completely. Colonel Ryan Davis, now a general after the Kalari victory, argued for caution. Making enemies of the Council's most powerful members could result in the destruction of everything humans had built. But he also admitted that the current system would never allow humanity to reach its full potential. Dr. Maya Johnson proposed the creation of something that had never existed before in galactic history. She called it the Adaptive Alliance, a confederation of primitive species that would share knowledge freely and support each other against more advanced civilizations. The idea was radical because it went against everything the Council stood for. For millions of years, galactic society had been based on hierarchy and the belief that some species were naturally superior to others. The alliance would prove that cooperation between equals could be more powerful than domination by superiors. Kate Williams began working with Taraki engineers to create hybrid technologies that combined human adaptiveness with insect-like coordination. The results were amazing. Systems that took human computers hours to optimize could be perfected in minutes. When guided by Taraki hive minds, the first major success came when Alliance engineers solved a problem that had puzzled Council scientists for centuries. The Granith homeworld was slowly dying because its core was cooling down. Advanced species had tried to fix the problem using their natural powers, but nothing worked. Human adaptive processors working with Taraki coordination, and granite geological knowledge, found a solution in 3 weeks. They could not restart the planet's core directly, but they could use a network of thermal generators to distribute heat more efficiently. The project would take decades to complete, but it would save an entire world. News of the Alliance's success spread through the galaxy's communication networks, despite Council efforts to suppress it. Primitive species that had never dared to hope for better treatment began to believe that change was possible. More importantly, some younger members of advanced species started questioning why their elders were so afraid of cooperation. Captain Dan Foster made the discovery that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. While exploring ancient ruins on a forgotten world in the Outer Rim, his team found a data cache left behind by a vanished race called the Architects. The information in the cache revealed the truth about the Galactic Council's power. The technology that made species like the Zephyrians and Vorthons seem so advanced was not originally theirs. They had inherited it from the Architects millions of years ago and had been using it ever since without truly understanding how it worked. Dan's team found blueprints for devices that the Council claimed were impossible to build. They discovered that abilities like matter, manipulation, and dimensional phasing were not natural gifts, but learned skills that any species could develop with proper training and equipment. Most shocking of all was the revelation that the Architects had specifically designed their technology to be adaptive. It was supposed to grow and change with its users, becoming more powerful over time. But the species that inherited it had been too proud or too afraid to allow such changes. They preferred the safety of static power to the uncertainty of growth. Maya Johnson studied the Architect data and realized that humanity had been unknowingly following the original design principles. Human adaptive technology was closer to the Architect's vision than anything the Council possessed. In trying to keep humans down, the advanced species had prevented themselves from reaching their own full potential. The Alliance began sharing Architect knowledge with all its members. Species that had been classified as primitive for millions of years started developing capabilities that matched or exceeded those of their supposed superiors. The rigid hierarchy of galactic civilization began to crack under the pressure of this new reality. General Ryan Davis knew that the Council would not allow these developments to continue. The powerful species had built their entire society on the belief that they were naturally superior to everyone else. Proof that this belief was false would threaten everything they had worked to create and maintain. Intelligence reports from Alliance sympathizers within Council space confirmed what everyone expected. The advanced species were preparing for war. They could not allow primitive races to gain enough power to challenge the established order. The Alliance would have to be destroyed before it could spread its dangerous ideas any further. Beth Parker addressed the Alliance leadership from New Haven's main council chamber. Representatives of 50 different species listened as she explained the choice they all faced. They could surrender now and accept whatever punishment the Council chose to give them, or they could stand together and fight for the right to determine their own destiny. The vote was unanimous. Every species in the Alliance agreed to resist Council demands for submission. They knew the war would be brutal and many of them would not survive it. But they also knew that some things were worth fighting for even when victory seemed impossible. Kate Williams worked day and night to prepare Alliance defenses for the coming storm. Her adaptive processors had learned so much from their various challenges that they were beginning to develop capabilities she had never imagined. The technology was evolving faster than its creators could keep up with. As reports of massive Council fleet movements reached the Outer Rim, the Alliance made final preparations for what everyone knew would be the most important battle in galactic history. The outcome would determine whether the universe continued to be ruled by inherited privilege or whether it would embrace the potential that existed in every species. 5 years had passed since humanity first met the Galactic Council. The colony ship Hope's Dawn carried 10,000 volunteers toward the coordinates given by Thisahel. Engineer Kate Williams stood in the ship's workshop and put the finishing touches on her latest creation. The device looked simple, but it would change everything. Dr. Alex Thompson walked into the workshop carrying a cup of coffee and a worried expression. He had been Kate's partner in the secret project for 3 years. Both of them knew they were breaking every rule the Council had set for humanity. They were also sure it was the right thing to do. Kate held up the small metal box and smiled. Inside was the first adaptive processor ever built by human hands. Unlike alien technology that stayed the same forever, this device could learn and change. It would study any problem and find new solutions in real time. Alex tested the device by giving it a simple puzzle. The processor solved it in seconds. Then he gave it a harder puzzle. The device took longer but found an answer the creators had not expected. By the third test, the processor was creating solutions that were better than anything Alex could imagine. Colonel Ryan Davis entered the workshop just as Kate was packing the device away. The military man had volunteered to lead the colony's defense force. He knew the Outer Rim was dangerous and humans would need every advantage they could get. Ryan had brought news from the colony site. The first ships had arrived at the world they named New Haven. The planet was barely suitable for human life. The air was thin and the soil was poor. Water existed, but it was hard to find. The Council had given humanity exactly what they promised: a place where humans could survive but not thrive. Kate showed Ryan the adaptive processor and explained how it worked. The device could be connected to weapons, ships, or machines to make them smarter and more effective. Instead of being locked into one design, human technology would grow and improve with every challenge it faced. The three of them knew this was dangerous. If the Council discovered humans were developing technology beyond their allowed level, the punishment would be severe. But they also knew humanity could not survive as a Class 7 species forever. The galaxy was full of threats and humans needed to be able to defend themselves. When the Hope's Dawn reached New Haven, the colonists found a harsh world that tested their resolve every day. The thin air made simple work exhausting. The poor soil refused to grow earth crops. Strange weather patterns brought sudden storms that could destroy equipment in minutes. Kate worked with teams of engineers to install adaptive processors in every important system. The colony's power generators learned to handle the planet's unusual electrical storms. The water purification systems adapted to filter out toxins no Earth system had ever encountered. The greenhouse computers found ways to help crops grow in alien soil. Dr. Thompson led research teams that studied every aspect of their new world. Unlike other species that used their natural powers to reshape planets, humans had to understand and work with what they found. This approach was slower, but it taught them things that more advanced species never learned. Commander Beth Parker arrived with the colony's security forces and immediately began preparing for trouble. The Outer Rim was home to pirates and raiders who preyed on weak settlements. Most new colonies relied on Council protection, but humans were expected to defend themselves. Beth worked with Ryan to create defense plans that used human strengths, instead of trying to copy alien tactics. They could not move objects with their minds or walk through walls, but humans were good at working together and solving problems under pressure. The first test came sooner than anyone expected. 6 months after the colony was established, sensors detected incoming ships. The vessels matched the design used by Kalari raiders, a species known for their powerful telepathic abilities and brutal tactics. Most species feared the Kalari because their mind powers could cause pain, confusion, and panic from a distance. Colonies usually surrendered rather than face the agony of telepathic attack. The raiders expected New Haven to follow the same pattern. Beth Parker stood in the colony's command center and watched 12 Kalari ships approach. Each vessel was larger and more powerful than anything humans possessed. Under normal circumstances, the outcome would be decided before the first shot was fired. But these were not normal circumstances. Kate's adaptive processors had been learning about Kalari technology for months. Every signal the raiders sent was analyzed and studied. By the time the ships entered weapons range, the human defenses knew exactly how their enemies operated. The Kalari began their attack with the telepathic assault that had broken hundreds of other species. Waves of mental energy struck the human defenders and caused exactly the pain and confusion the raiders expected. But then something happened that had never occurred before in galactic history. The humans adapted. The pain was real, but they learned to work through it. The confusion was intense, but they found ways to communicate despite it. The panic was overwhelming, but they discovered how to turn it into determination. Jake Morrison led a squadron of human fighters against the larger Kalari ships. His pilots could not match alien speed or firepower, but they could do something no other species had ever done. They learned from every attack and got better with each passing minute. The first human fighters that engaged the raiders were quickly destroyed. But each loss taught the survivors something new about Kalari tactics. The adaptive processors in their ships studied every enemy move and found weaknesses that even the Kalari did not know they had. By the middle of the battle, human pilots were avoiding attacks that should have been impossible to dodge. Their weapons were hitting targets that should have been out of range. Their tactics were evolving faster than the Kalari could adjust to them. Kate Williams watched from the command bunker as her adaptive technology proved itself in combat. The processors were learning so fast that human ships were becoming more effective with every passing second. What started as a hopeless fight was turning into something else entirely. The Kalari raiders had never faced an enemy that got stronger during battle. Their telepathic powers were designed to break the will of other species, but humans seemed to draw strength from pain and adversity. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Kalari found themselves afraid. The turning point came when Ryan Davis led a ground assault on a crashed Kalari ship. The alien crew tried to use their mental powers to drive the humans away, but the adaptive processors had learned to help human minds resist telepathic attack. Instead of retreating in pain and terror, the human soldiers advanced with grim determination. They could not block the mental assault completely, but they could endure it long enough to accomplish their mission. The Kalari crew surrendered rather than face beings who seemed immune to their greatest weapon. News of the Kalari defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light. For the first time in recorded history, a Class 7 species had not only survived an attack by a more advanced race, but had actually won. The implications were staggering. Beth Parker sent a message to the Galactic Council that was broadcast on every frequency used by civilized species. Her words were simple, but they shook the foundations of galactic society. She said that humanity did not accept the Council's classification and would not bow to any species that thought power gave them the right to rule others. The galaxy had expected humans to quietly accept their place as primitives. Instead, they had announced their intention to forge their own path among the stars. The reaction from the Council was swift and predictable. Humanity had just declared war on the established order of the universe. But in the Outer Rim, on a harsh world that was supposed to break human spirit, 10,000 colonists celebrated their first victory. They had proven that adaptive technology and human determination could overcome natural advantages and inherited power. Kate Williams looked at the stars and knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans refused to stay down. The lesson would be painful for everyone involved, but it was a lesson that needed to be taught. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova and watched the stars through the main window. The ship moved quietly through space toward a place humans had never seen before. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations with nervous energy. Everyone knew this day would change everything for the human race. Dr. Lisa Chang walked up beside Jake and looked out at the same stars. She carried a datapad filled with information about alien species they might meet. Lisa had spent years studying every signal Earth had received from space. She knew more about alien life than anyone else on the planet. But knowing about something and meeting it face to face were very different things. Admiral Sam Rodriguez entered the bridge wearing his best uniform. The old soldier had fought in wars on Earth, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. He would speak for all of humanity today. The weight of that responsibility showed on his face. 3 days earlier, Earth had received a message that changed history. The signal came from something called the Galactic Council. These aliens said they ruled most of the galaxy and wanted to meet with human leaders. They sent coordinates to a planet called Nexus Prime. The message was polite but felt more like a command than an invitation. Jake had volunteered to pilot the mission ship. He was one of Earth's best space captains and had explored more star systems than anyone else. The Terra Nova was humanity's most advanced ship, but Jake knew it would look like a toy next to alien technology. The journey to Nexus Prime took 2 weeks. During that time, Lisa studied everything they knew about the aliens. The signals Earth had received showed at least a dozen different species. Some could move objects with their minds. Others could walk through solid walls. A few seemed to be made of pure energy. Sam spent his time preparing speeches and thinking about what humanity wanted from this meeting. Earth needed new technology and resources. The planet was getting crowded and humans needed room to grow. Maybe these aliens would help or at least allow humans to settle on other worlds. Jake focused on flying the ship and watching for any signs of alien vessels. As they got closer to Nexus Prime, space became busier. Strange ships passed by that looked nothing like human designs. Some were huge and covered in lights. Others seemed to bend space around them as they moved. When Nexus Prime appeared on their screens, all three humans stopped talking. The planet was covered in massive cities that glowed with their own light. Rings of metal circled the world and ships moved between them like insects around a hive. The technology was so advanced it looked like magic. A voice spoke in perfect English through their communication system. The speaker said they were being guided to a landing platform. Jake followed the instructions and brought the Terra Nova down in a docking bay that could have held 1,000 ships their size. 3 figures waited for them on the platform. The first looked almost human but had blue skin and silver eyes. The second was tall and thin with too many arms. The third seemed to be made of living crystal that glowed from within. Dr. Chang was the first to speak when they met the aliens. She introduced herself and her companions. The crystal being responded in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. It said its name was Thisahal, and it spoke for the Galactic Council. Thisahal explained that the Council ruled over 2,000 worlds and 50 different species. Each species had earned its place through demonstrations of power and intelligence. The Council decided which species were advanced enough to join galactic civilization, and which ones needed to stay home. Sam asked what humanity needed to do to join the Council. Thisahal made a sound that might have been laughter. It said humans would need to be tested first. The testing would measure their technology, their special abilities, and their place in the natural order of things. The 3 humans were taken to a huge building in the center of the city. Inside, hundreds of different aliens filled a space larger than any stadium on Earth. Some floated in the air without wings. Others seemed to phase in and out of existence. A few looked like they were made of liquid metal or living fire. Jake realized they were looking at the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Each one represented a species that had conquered space and earned respect through strength. He wondered what chance humanity had among such incredible creatures. Thisahal stood at the center of the gathering and began to speak. It explained that a new species from a small world called Earth wanted to join galactic society. The crystal being described humans as biological creatures with no special powers and basic technology. A creature that looked like a giant insect made clicking sounds that the translation system turned into laughter. Something that resembled a living cloud pulsed with what seemed like amusement. Across the chamber, beings that could reshape matter and control energy looked at the 3 humans like they were looking at clever pets. Thisahal announced the Council's decision. Humanity would be classified as Class 7 primitives. They could trade with other species, but only for basic goods. They would be allowed to settle one small colony in the Outer Rim, where they would not bother more advanced civilizations. The chamber filled with sounds of approval from the alien delegates. To them, this was generous treatment for such a backward species. Many Class 7 species were not allowed to leave their home worlds at all. Dr. Chang felt her heart sink as she listened to the decision. Years of dreaming about joining a galactic community were being reduced to permission to set up one tiny outpost. In the least desirable part of space, Admiral Rodriguez wanted to argue but knew it would be pointless. These beings could destroy Earth with a thought if they chose to. Accepting their judgment was the only way to keep humanity safe. But Jake Morrison noticed something the others missed. As the aliens laughed and dismissed humanity, some of them kept glancing at the 3 humans with expressions that looked almost nervous. It was as if they were trying too hard to convince themselves that humans were harmless. The meeting ended with Thisahal giving them coordinates for their permitted colony site. The 3 humans were escorted back to their ship and told they had 1 month to establish their settlement. After that, any human ships found outside the Outer Rim would be destroyed. As the Terra Nova left Nexus Prime, Jake looked back at the glowing planet and made a promise to himself. Humanity might be starting at the bottom of the galactic order, but they would not stay there. Humans had always been good at proving others wrong about what they could accomplish. The long journey home gave them time to plan and think. By the time Earth came into view, they knew what they had to do. The galaxy expected humans to quietly accept their place as primitives. Instead, humanity would show the universe what it meant to never give up.